Hi, my name is Demi, I'm 22 and I have FASD, also known as fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So I was adopted at the age of about 2.5. Up until then I was kind of in and out of hospital, but I'm lucky in the sense that I was adopted by the person that actually fostered me from the day of me coming out of the hospital. So I was kind of lucky in the sense that I wasn't moved around from different homes and everything. So kind of growing up for me, that's always been my forever home and my forever family, which has been really good. Growing up was, for me, a normal childhood. I didn't really know any different at that time when I was so young. Up until about when I was a teenager, I didn't really know or understand what I had. So just issues were dealt with as and when they cropped up. I had a few health issues, had to have a few operations done, had to get my windpipe widened, so I had a very narrow windpipe. I've also had pneumonia and a collapsed lung. I've also had hearing problems. I've had a perforated eardrum and that still causes problems to this day. I'm always getting ear infections. And another thing was just sight problems as well. But apart from that, now there hasn't been any long-lasting damage. So it was just me and my mum living in the house. That was it. So when I was younger, I remember going on holiday together a lot of the time. A lot of her family, which then became my family, live in Australia. So we were always out at least once a year off to Australia to visit them. The first trip for me to meet them was just after the adoption had gone through. So when I was about 3, we went over to visit them, and they got to see me and I got to meet them for the first time. But yeah, we've always gone on cruises, on trips to Australia, and yeah, it's just been the two of us and it's been great. We have a very close relationship. So I was diagnosed with FASD at around the same time I was adopted, 2.5. That was the official diagnosis. But I think they'd always known there was a possibility of it. There was very prominent facial features I had at that time. There was also the clear history of my mum and alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and also the early stages of my life there were development delays and everything. So yeah, the official diagnosis came through, and that would be 1999, 2000, around about then. Although I was diagnosed then, I didn't actually become fully aware of my issues and how it affected me only till recently. By that I mean like my late teens, early 20s. I'm 22 now. Having a diagnosis at an early age has definitely helped me. It's helped me to know what to research, what terms, what words to put in Google search. So what I didn't know up until recently is I was diagnosed with FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome, which, if I'm correct, is when the facial features are present. It depends on how you're diagnosed as to what they call it. But if I'm researching something, I'll type in FASD and so much more comes up, you know. So yeah, having a diagnosis has meant that I've managed to find websites, fact sheets, organisations in Scotland, as well as there's some fantastic organisations over in America, in Australia. How I feel about having FASD. Obviously, it's not a choice. It's not a choice on my behalf, and it's not a choice on my maternal mother's behalf. I think it's important to say that at no point have I ever been angry at my maternal mother for drinking. I am fully aware that alcoholism and drug abuse is an illness in itself. You know, and although it's not a choice, I do feel embarrassed sometimes. You know, I'm aware I have these issues, but I can't stop them sometimes, you know. But by the time I've done something, it's done, and I'm like, why did I do that? You know, it's embarrassing. It can be frustrating. I get incredibly frustrated sometimes with how my brain works. But I think an important message to take away from this is don't blame yourself, and don't put hate on yourself for something that's out of your control, something that wasn't a choice and that you can't help. Because I bet you there's people out there that are just a bit too hard on themselves, like me, and you shouldn't be, because you are who you are. I've learned that I need to live with what I have. It's never going to go away. It will get better with training and with information and with practice and techniques and different life experiences. The things I find a challenge. There are a few things that I find a challenge, and things that are difficult for me might not be difficult for you, or, you know, as I said, it's a spectrum. Everybody's affected slightly differently. My main difficulty and my main challenge, especially when it comes to just relationships and daily life, I guess, is consequences. I don't see consequences. There has been many times I have done something or taken action on something that wasn't appropriate. You know, I'll do something. Obviously it's a bad choice. Obviously it's not good. And the reaction I get from other people, I don't understand why. I'm like, why are you angry at what I've said? Why has this happened because I've done this? It's not just seeing consequences, it's just following a logical sequence of events is what I struggle with. But it's if I do something, I don't see, number one, what's on the other end of that decision I make, and what the outcome of that decision's going to be, whether it's positive or negative. And also I can't see how it affects the other person, so what it's like in their shoes. I can't, I'm only seeing it from my perspective. And unfortunately, for people that don't understand, that comes across as selfish, arrogant, disrespectful. It comes over so many different things. And yeah, I'll admit, I've hurt a few people in my life, and it's all because of I've done something that is clearly wrong, clearly not acceptable, and I've genuinely not seen it that way. Another thing, which is I think a little bit more important to address for me, is lack of impulse control. By that, and that also ties in with the consequences. So I'll make an impulsive decision. For me personally, it's spending money. I can go out and spend £200 on just stuff, you know, just like maybe household bits and pieces. or this new alarm clock, or this new, it's usually technology based, and yet that money should have actually gone towards food for that month, rent for that month. And this isn't I don't plan ahead. This is the whole sequence of events. I don't plan ahead. Also, maybe going out late at night. It's like I'll just go out and maybe I've not charged my phone, but I'll go out anyway. Maybe I don't have a plan of action as to, okay, if my phone does run out of battery, how do I then get home? Transport, money. None of this comes into play when I'm making these decisions. It's just, I'm going to go out all night. I'm going to go out for a late night drive, and yeah, who knows what's going to happen. I'm just going to go out on a late night drive. Thankfully, it's not got me into legal trouble, but I have been in a few dangerous situations. Like, I am a young woman going out on her own, driving at, I'm out till like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's not, it's not very sensible, but I do it anyway. Definitely getting more support through school, both primary school and high school, would have, I think it would have prevented problems further down the line. For me, school was tough. It was tough. You know, I always felt like, I don't want to say ignored, but I did feel like I was kind of just part of the class. And that's fine, obviously, but there wasn't that extra support that I really should have been getting, that one-to-one support. And also, very few of the staff actually had ever heard of FASD, which kind of meant they didn't understand and they weren't willing to research it or find out ways of helping me. I was just kind of classed as a normal child. When it came to homework, I rarely handed it in on time, and it was just a case of, you don't try hard enough, you're rebellious, you don't listen, that I couldn't care. You know, I was constantly getting all this feedback when I was at school. So definitely, when it comes to school, that's where the support would have been beneficial, definitely. Three pieces of information I would give to teaching staff and education staff would be, number one is one-to-one support is key. Like for instance, if you're giving an instruction to the whole class, then straight away go to the individual and repeat the instructions to them and make sure they completely understand it. And always just going back and making sure they understand what they're meant to be doing and everything, because I'm terrible at this, and I know some other people maybe are as well, just saying yes, that's okay, yes, I understand, and yet they don't actually understand a thing of what's being said, you know, or they're just getting bits and pieces. Number two is they're not doing it deliberately. They're not a bad child. They're not paying attention. You know, they are trying their hardest, and sometimes they just can't quite achieve what they're expected to. Sometimes they can't hand homework in on time. Number 3, I think this is probably the most important thing, is having a support plan in place, and having regular meetings with parents and teachers, but also involving the individual as well that you're trying to help. What I found during school was there was a lot of meetings going on between the teachers and my mum that I wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware of what plans had been put in place. I wasn't aware of what strategies had been put in place, and I think that makes it more challenging, because at the end of the day it's about the individual. That's what the whole key focus is. There can be strategies put in place that work well, really good for maybe a couple of weeks, couple of months, and then all of a sudden it stops. Something changes.